coming. Don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming across the USA. Fair tax is coming. Clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey. Hey, hey.
Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Rumble Errol.
And I'm glad to see you back from the living dead there, partner.
Well, I'm mostly back.
Oh, and I forgot to tell folks, we are the FAIRtax
FAIRtax
Guys. There we go. Now I'm glad to see you back from the living dead. Hope all the coughing and snorting and sniffing and sneezing is done with.
Yeah, it's almost over.
I can see. Well, it's income tax season. That'll make anybody sick.
Yeah, that's true.
I tell you what. As we learned from our Facebook Live thing a couple of days ago, people do not like the income tax.
Oh, some of those stories that we had there. And I got a good one afterwards, too, that I'm going to include in today's show.
Okay, but let's do first things first. How to get in touch with us. TheFairtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. That is monitored. We do watch that every day. Best way to get a hold of us, though, is on our Facebook page. If you've got a Facebook account, just go there, look up FAIRtax Guys. And you can see our lovely mugs there, and while we're on radio and not television, leave us a comment. We'd love to interact with you, and so that's the best way to do that.
Yeah. Yep, and we always welcome your comments, and please let other people know about this podcast. It's an absolutely free podcast. You could be listening on either Spreaker.com, on iTunes, or iHeartRadio. It's free. We have a free app, whether you have an iPhone or an Android. Go to your app store and look for FAIRtax Power Radio. It's a free app. If you have a smartphone, that's the best way to listen to FAIRtax Power Radio. It's so easy. Download the app, and when you activate the app, there's our programs from 1 through whatever, sitting right there waiting for you. So,
alrighty.
Good way to do it.
Let me jump in with this, too. Something we've been doing on FTPR here for the past several episodes, and that is highlighting what Congress is doing behind your back.
Yeah.
Looking up congress.gov and seeing what's in there. Of course, they're not in session now as we record this program. So there have not been quite as many additions to the ways they want to monkey with the tax code as there has been over the past few weeks. Yeah. I found one right at the top of the heap here when you do a search on Internal Revenue Code there at congress.gov. And I found something that I thought was just amazing.
First off, how many, Bob?
It is up to 483.
All right, 483 proposals to change the tax code since the beginning of the 115th Congress, which was January, at the beginning of January. So in 3.5 months, they've got 483 proposals to change the tax code. What does that tell you, folks? That income tax will never be stable. Congress will never stop changing it. But let's, Bob, come up with that example of that shining example of
what I saw on this one was just struck by this thing that was H.R. 2078. Representative William Roger of Texas District 25 introduced this thing. It says to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to simplify individual income and corporate tax rates, which the fair tax gets rid of entirely.
Yeah.
To set a maximum on the capital gains rate, which the fair tax gets rid of entirely. To make permanent, and translate that until Congress decides to monkey with it again, to make permanent the deduction for dividends received for repatriated foreign earnings, which is totally irrelevant under the fair tax because you don't tax what you earn, you tax what you spend. And to reduce the rate of payroll and self-employment taxes, to make 100% bonus depreciation permanent, and to repeal the federal estate and gift taxes, all of which the fair tax does much better than anything that this guy is going to come up with.
You know, it sounds like he's trying to do an end run around the Paul Ryan plan, because a lot of what Paul Ryan has in his quote-unquote better way is addressed by some of those concepts. So, and by the way, what Bob just read, that's the title to the bill. That's not the summary or even the contents. That's the title to the bill.
H.R. 2078. And before we move on, you got a whole stack of stuff. We're going to touch on stuff that we have done on FAIRtax Power Radio here in the past.
Yeah,
we have got to show people just how rotten to the core the current income tax system is. And a lot of people, they just, do their taxes on TurboTax, takes them forever to do it, and they're done with it for the year. And these horror stories don't really touch them, but they are real. They do touch real people, and we're going to dig into that for just a minute. But I got something in the mail today.
Oh, yeah.
And I would imagine that thousands of these have been sent out, if not millions of them. It's another one of these opinion surveys, or it's a fundraising effort that's disguised as an opinion survey. It came from the Republican National Committee. And, of course, it asks you a bunch of leading questions and then says, oh, can you give us some money to help all this happen? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I got a big, fat, black Sharpie and just wrote across the front of that thing, pass the fair tax. Stuck a pocket card in it and sent it back to them.
Oh,
so anybody who gets these political opinion surveys, or they're not really opinion surveys, they're fundraisers disguised as opinion surveys, just stick a fair tax card in it, write on the thing, we want the fair tax, and send it back.
Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, if we get enough of those things, they'll start paying attention.
Yeah, that's right. If we get thousands and tens of thousands of people sending it back, say, ignoring everything they're asking you and just say, pass the fair tax. Maybe they'll get the hint here.
Now that's going to cost you. That one costs you a stamp to put back. A lot of times when I get this spam email that have these business reply envelopes in them, you just stick a fair tax card in there and send it back.
Yeah,
this one's worth spending a stamp on.
Yeah, and sending this survey back like that, just say pass the fair tax. There's a certain amount of personal gratification attached with that.
That sure is.
I will definitely be looking for that survey when I get home today from the studio.
And hopefully you will get one and you will do the same thing with it that I did.
All right. Yeah.
Before we get to dig too far of our time go away, let's go ahead and dig into what you've got. You have got a whole stack of stuff over there.
I got a bunch of stuff, and this is all ripped from the headlines. Just various news agencies and organizations. I get it from here and there. I get a lot of this from FAIRtax Friday, by the way.
Yeah, and you'll source all this, so this isn't fake news. You'll know where this is coming from.
This is not fake news.
All right. Well, I'm going to sit back and watch for a while. Have at it.
All right. This is from CNS News, and it's dated March 30th of this year. 793. I'm sorry. Let me start that off again. 374 trillion, 793 billion sales tax hit record in 2016. Now, what they're talking about is sales tax collected by state and local organizations. Bob and I have mentioned before that we live in Florida. Florida does not have an income tax; it has a sales tax, which is its main source of revenue. So all the there's 45 states that have a sales tax, and there's local organizations. Sometimes there's a county tax. New York City has a tax, and so on. So they
New York City has a tax on the air you breathe. Almost.
And you know what? That air isn't all that good to begin with. But anyways, so they've collected a record amount of sales tax. And it says the record of 374 trillion, 793 billion in total general sales and gross receipts tax that state and local governments collected in 2016 equaled approximately $1,160 for every one of the 323,127,513 men, women, and children that the Census Bureau estimated resided in the United States in 2016. Now, I have a couple of questions. This is just about, sales tax. Here's a couple of questions to think about.
How much of that was evaded? Am I jumping onto your tongue here?
Consider these rhetorical questions. This includes legal and illegal residents. Okay? I mean, there's a lot of talk about, illegal residents and so forth. We've talked about this. This figure includes everybody who bought anything and paid the state and local sales tax on it, because you can't get away from it. So whether a person is here legally or not, they are contributing to the funding of their local and state governments by paying the sales tax. Legal and illegal residents paid the sales tax. My other question is, how many of these folks paid income tax? Well, then you've got a lot of people who did not pay the income tax even though they're required to. And we've talked about that.
That's it. That's the evasion question that is going to be the elephant in the room that Congress is eventually going to have to shoot some way, somehow.
Yeah. So they got record amounts of sales tax collected in 2016, but we still have problems with the income tax. Now, this is very short. This is, let's see, who's this from? This is from Free Beacon, and it's dated March 18th of this year. When a worker's after-tax income declines due to higher taxes, that person has a reduced incentive to work, a Congressional Budget Office analyst concluded. Well,
I wonder how much they spent on that study.
Yeah, that was my thought. I hope they didn't spend a lot of time on what seems to be common sense. But then there's a quote: "When workers' earnings rise, but their after-tax income rises less because of increases in their income and payroll taxes or declines in their benefits from government programs, their incentive to work typically declines." Yeah, all right. This relates to, the reason I'm reading this is because it relates to the very important conceptual difference between an income tax and a sales tax, all right? The income tax penalizes you on your hard work and ingenuity. And when they keep raising tax rates, or you enter a new tax bracket with a higher rate, and even though your income goes up, your take-home goes up less, you're sounding like, why am I killing myself? Why am I doing this? But not so with the sales tax, all right? With the sales tax, the amount you pay depends on your spending habits. And so if there's somebody out there looking for a new car, and they decide they can afford a Cadillac, so be it. Let them buy a Cadillac. They're going to pay more sales tax on that. But if they want a used Chevy, well, for one thing, under the fair tax, used Chevy is going to be no taxes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because used products,
fair tax on used goods.
So there's a huge difference, and this points out the difference why the income tax hurts our economy.
Yeah, but Ron, Paul Ryan is going to save us. He's going to reduce all those brackets from 7 down to 3, so there won't be as many times when you jump up into the next tax bracket. How long is that going to hold?
Yeah, exactly. Now, what Paul Ryan wants to do will help temporarily. Yeah,
until the lobbyists get a hold of the Congress critters again.
Yeah, as Bob and I said, we've seen this movie before, 31 years ago, when President Reagan flattened out the tax code and removed a lot of the language. That's why they refer to the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, because it was completely rewritten and a lot of stuff was taken out. And since then, it has almost tripled in size. The brackets are back up to 7. The highest tax rate is almost 40%. And the amount of loopholes and legal deductions and all this nonsense in there, Paul Ryan's plan will help temporarily, but it's not going to last long. And I've got another thing in here I'll get to later about his border adjustability tax. Mm-hmm. That's not real popular. But anyways, let me go on to another group of ripped from the headlines here. And this is just about IRS stuff in general. Okay. Justices reject appeal of Tea Party groups over the IRS review policies. The Supreme Court has rejected an appeal from a nonprofit group that wanted to sue individual IRS officials for targeting Tea Party groups that applied for tax-exempt status. So the Supreme Court turned that down. That's too bad. The justices on Tuesday, by the way, this is from the Seattle Times, and it's dated February 21st. Seattle Times. Justices on Tuesday left in place an appeals court ruling that said that the group could not sue former IRS official Lois Lerner. Yeah, her name has come up before, hasn't it? Yeah. And others for their roles in singling out certain applications for extra, sometimes burdensome security or scrutiny. The Inspector General's report found no evidence of political conspiracy.
They weren't looking very hard.
No evidence of political conspiracy, but blamed the agency for poor management. Okay. For me, that's a stretch.
Some faceless entity that you can't hold anybody accountable for.
So anyway, they went ahead with this lawsuit. Now, this group that brought the lawsuit had to bear the legal costs, and the IRS had to bear the legal costs. But let me ask you, who pays the IRS's legal bills?
We do.
Yeah, we do. Isn't this so convenient for the IRS? First off, this group goes after the IRS because they've been badgered and they've been abused by the IRS. So they bear legal costs. Then the IRS has to defend themselves and get counsel and so forth and go all the way to the Supreme Court. And who pays for the IRS legal costs? We do. Isn't this such a nice situation for the IRS?
I wish we could throw that thing on the scrap heap of history.
Boy.
We can. Pass the fair tax.
Hey, that's a good idea. All right. This is the one that I found online right after our Facebook Live. Mm-hmm. All right. Headaches abound for Minnesota man declared dead by the IRS 29 years ago. By the way, folks, he's only 33 now. Do the math. The IRS declared this guy dead when he was 4 years old.
How did he know he existed at 4 years old?
This is from Fox News, and it's dated April 17th. And it literally came out about an hour after our Facebook Live. 33-year-old Adam Roning is a busy husband, father, and panel technician, like many Minnesotans, who has taxes withheld from his biweekly paycheck. They've never been able to prove that I'm dead, he said. It's always me proving that I'm still here. And this has been going on for 20
How much proof do they require?
Jeez. Like maybe a personal visit to the IRS office. Hello, I'm here. I'm still alive. Here, check my pulse.
But it's not you. They'll always have something.
By the way, the IRS sees it. Roning has been dead for 29 years. The error is one of that Roning's mother fought to correct when her son was 4. They blamed a computer glitch, but it has been glitching ever since, his mom said. So in 2009, he sends in his tax return because, he's working and they're taking withholding out, and he's doing his return at the end of the year, and he's got some money coming back.
He wants a refund.
Yeah, so that's when the IRS gave me half of my refund and explained to me the reason I couldn't get the full refund was because I was deceased. I mean, there is so much lunacy in that one statement. All right?
Doesn't it strike you rather funny that this government agency is writing a letter to someone that they think is dead? How did they expect him to read it? Your tax dollars at work, folks. We need to get rid of this system.
I don't know. If we declared ourselves dead, would we only owe half of the taxes that we owe?
I don't know, but we wouldn't get our refund.
Isn't this a bizarre story? I mean, like Bob says, the IRS is writing somebody that they claim is dead, telling him why he's only getting half of his refund, which makes no sense at all. No sense at all. I mean, that's somebody just pulling it out of the air or someplace else. So that's an IRS horror story. And you know what? That guy needs to go see his congressman or woman. Mm-hmm. I mean, don't leave it up to yourself to try to fix the IRS, because there's only one fix for the IRS, isn't it, Bob?
That is to pass the fair tax and get rid of it.
Yeah.
And again, the fair tax is the only tax reform proposal that gets rid of the IRS, because every other tax reform proposal keeps the income tax. And if you've got an income tax, you've got the IRS, and you can try to turn it into a warm and fuzzy, friendlier organization, which probably isn't going to last long either. But we got to get rid of it. And the only way to get rid of it is the fair tax, folks. Just do the math.
H.R. 25. So do what you can to tell your Congress critters you expect them to support and co-sponsor the fair tax in the House and the Senate. Okay. We've talked about this one before. IRS unleashes private collection agencies to chase tax debts. Now, previously they tried this sometime, maybe 10 years ago, and it was a disaster. All right. First off, the IRS tells you that they don't hire private collection agencies. Then they decided to. However, a lot of collection agencies conducted a lot of fraud and called up people claiming that they were a collection agency for the IRS trying to collect money, and they had no such authority to do so. So it ended in disaster. Now, this one, it sounds like they've done their due diligence because apparently the IRS just doesn't have the wherewithal. I mean, their budget has been cut. They are only auditing 0.7% of all the returns. Remember, they get about 140 million returns. And out of that, only 0.2% are actual in-person audits. So they need help, yeah. The IRS
so the
needs
chances
help.
of getting away with some shenanigans on your income tax return are pretty good.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately. And a lot of people taking advantage.
And then you and I have to pay for the difference.
This is from April 10th, and it's from Forbes. You may hate being chased by IRS, but now 4 private debt collection firms are getting in on the action too. Congress approved letting the IRS farm out some of the collections back in 2015. Now the IRS is rolling it out. One key point about private collectors: the IRS will always notify taxpayers first that the debt is being farmed out. That is supposed to prevent scams, which the last time they tried that, the whole program was rife with scams. People were being scammed all the time. A lot of fraud going on. Taxpayers with overdue taxes will always receive multiple contacts, letters, and phone calls. I don't know about that phone call thing. I mean, if somebody called me...
If I don't recognize the number, I don't answer.
Yeah, exactly. And anybody can call and say they're from the IRS, but first from the IRS, not from the debt collector. So if you do owe taxes, you're going to hear from the IRS first. And then maybe, and they list the 4 debt collectors. I'm not going to go through it, but so they're going to try this program again.
How big a cut do the private debt collectors get? Did it say?
What do you want to bet that somebody's going to screw this up and it's going to be subject to fraud again?
Well, that's just more inefficiency. You could not design a more inefficient system than the current income tax if you tried. You just couldn't do it.
Oh, I'm sorry, folks.
It needs to go away.
Yeah.
We'll keep pounding on that until enough people understand that and get on your Congress critters and make them support the fair tax.
Right. This cold of mine needs to go away, too. Anyways, okay, here's another one. This is from WND. I believe that's World News Daily. It's from April 11th.
I think that's World Net Daily.
World what?
I think it's World Net Daily. I'm not 100%
okay,
certain.
thank you.
We'll figure it
World
out.
Net Daily. All right. Anyways, it's WND.com. 7 years later, IRS finally approves Tea Party group's tax status. 7 years later. Yeah, but it seems to me the elections are over, aren't they?
Yes, I would seem to think them. That's just exactly what I was trying to think. When did the administration change and stuff like that?
Yep. They applied in 2010 before the 2012 election, so they were not approved, to be a tax. What is it? Tax-free?
Tax exempt.
Tax exempt. Thank you. Senior moment there. For the 2012, the 2014, and the 2016 election. Yeah. The American Center for Law and Justice on Tuesday declared victory over the Internal Revenue Service for at least one of its clients after a Washington state group with Tea Party in its name was approved by the federal agency to receive tax-exempt status by a lobbying organization. It took 7 years. The group approved Tri-Cities Tea Party had requested permission in 2010 to operate as a 501c4. No group of citizens, whether conservative, liberal, or liberal, should ever have their First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and freedom of association infringed by a targeting scheme by the government.
Yeah, now that is the one thing that people who dislike the Tea Party, disagree with them politically, and who think that the IRS going after them is a wonderful idea, they need to realize that, hey, if this agency is allowed to continue to exist, this practice is allowed to continue to exist, one of these days they're going to be coming after you.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
may be coming after folks you disagree with today, but tomorrow they'll be coming after you, and the whole system, again, I can't pound on this enough, the whole system needs to be yanked out by the roots and thrown on the scrap heap of history. Get rid of the IRS, get rid of the income tax, pass the fair tax, go.
Yeah. Any agency that can be weaponized like that, the IRS, the EPA, there's no need for it. We need to get, and in this case, as Bob said, we have the solution. Get rid of the IRS altogether.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I'll tell you what, we're getting close on time here, so I know you got more stuff over there in your stack.
Yeah.
So let's hold that off for episode 2 here.
Okay.
We're going to continue this on FAIRtax Power Radio here next week.
Okay.
But right now, we got about 4 minutes left. Let's mention how folks can help. Of course, the first thing to do, PopVox. This came up on our Facebook Live as well. You have got to tell your Congress critters that you want the fair tax. It'd be nice if you write letters to the editor. It would be nice if you can get on local or even national radio talk shows if you can. But you really need to make an impression with the folks that count. And those are the folks who write the tax code, who decide what it says. Those are your representatives and senators in Congress. And the best way to get to them is through PopVox, POPVOX.
Yeah, that's a great website started by a couple of ladies in D.C. And the people in Washington do watch it. They do watch PopVox because it's set up so that they can go to their district and pull up a particular piece of legislation and see how that legislation is faring in their district, including the fair tax or whatever, in both the House and the Senate. So it's a very useful and very widely used piece of or website. And so that's a great way. When you have to enter, log in with your name and your address, because with your address they know what your congressional district is in. All right, and so then your comments go to your congressman and both of your senators, and they will respond to you. So that's a great way.
Yes.
Phone calls to your representative and senators. Phone calls are very good. Okay, you can go on the website and find out, whether it's their local office, in a nearby town, or the office in D.C. Phone calls are very good. They do carry a lot of weight along with PopVox. So I strongly recommend that you take the time and call your representative and your senators and express your support for the fair tax.
Amen. Now, even though there are a lot of politicized stuff going on up there, the fair tax is really not a political issue, not a partisan issue. I don't think there's anybody, regardless of your ideology or party affiliation, that would not like to see withholding go away, get the full gross amount of your paycheck every week. You get the prebate, which is a refund of tax you pay at the cash register that you don't owe. So, but really, most of the support for the fair tax has been on the Republican side of the aisle. But there is a lot in the fair tax that Democrats should like. And if you're represented by a Democrat in your congressional district or in your state as well, your senators, then you really need, more so than anything, to learn about the fair tax and then get on these guys who, because of partisan ideology from their leadership largely, they're just dismissing what is a wonderful idea, and it's costing you a bunch.
Yeah,
you really need to get on these guys.
Yeah, the fair tax would fix so many things. I mean, President Trump has made a lot of promises during his campaign. And another way you can influence, you can go to whitehouse.gov/contact. Whitehouse.gov/contact. I do this almost every day. And dear President Trump, you need to take a serious look at the fair tax. And then I'll give one of the particular reasons. It addresses many of his campaign promises. So you use that avenue also. Whitehouse.gov/contact and communicate directly with the president.
And one more quickie, tell your friends and family about FAIRtax Power Radio, get the free app, and go to bigsolution.org.
Yep.
Solution, not solutions, no S there. bigsolution.org. FAIRtax.org as well. FAIRtax.org has got a bunch of resources where you can really learn about the fair tax. Bigsolution.org is how you can get involved in it.
And don't forget our monthly webinar, the fourth Thursday. Go to fairtax.org/webinar and register.
Yes, and catch our Facebook Live events. We'll be announcing another one here shortly. And that's about all the time we've got for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming, don't stand in the way.